Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to talk about the experience of Finland in road towards well-being economy. Unfortunately, I don't have an animal in my slides, but I will tell you a story. And the story relates to a topic which has been touched upon many times over in the course of these 2 days, and that's GDP. So as we know, GDP is used mainly by the World Bank to classify countries into different lending groups. So we talk about high-income countries, upper middle-income countries, lower middle-income countries, and low-income countries. So that somehow creates our conception and idea of what kind of countries we have in the world. And now I'm going to talk about one island nation, and those of you in the audience who are from Iceland, don't be afraid, it's not going to be Iceland. It's going to be another island nation, and I will use that nation as a kind of a example, and I'll tell you some GDP indicators for that country. It had, in 1968, it had an average wealth of each inhabitant around $500,000 US. And in today's money, it is twice as much as oil fund assets in Norway per capita. So it was huge amount of assets they had. And they had the highest, or second highest GDP per capita in 1975. And now the thing is that how would we think that this level of GDP would predict their future well-being? So this is the country. It's smaller island than Iceland, way smaller. The name of the island is Nauru, and it had a huge assets in phosphate rock, which was used in and still used in for fertilizers in agriculture, and it was very easy to mine because it was near the surface. The deposits were near the surface, and it allowed very easy stripping operations. So what they, I think we can say that they somehow had a kind of a economy of well-being in the 1970s because the phosphate prices rose, and they had their well-being in terms of GDP increased tremendously. So they were able to buy luxury food items, alcohol, tobacco also, but they were also building roads and schools. They were sending diplomats to countries around the world. They also set up their own airline, and they made some investments. For example, they financed a West End musical in London depicting a very famous figure, and they also bought a skyscraper in Melbourne. But then what happened was that at some point the phosphate ran out, and what they ended up was that the country was almost bankrupt, or basically bankrupt. And also the health among the population was really poor. Smoking prevalence was about 50%. Nearly every adult was obese. 2/3 of the adult population had type 2 diabetes. So, and another issue was that 80% of the surface of this island was destroyed. So if we think about the well-being indicators, I think we should try to find a kind of indicators which could have helped the Nauruans to avoid the catastrophe and to somehow predict the looming peril already in the 1970s when it was still possible to change the course. And now the question is that what we can learn from this example. Of course, this is a kind of a cautionary example for the whole world, but in the following I'm only going to talk about Finland. So this is Finland as we want to show it to the world. We are the happiest country in the world 6 times over, and we have such a beautiful landscape. And why I chose this picture was for 2 other reasons. One is that Finland is also known as a country of 1,000 lakes. In fact, we have more than nearly 170,000 lakes in Finland. Another issue is that in the picture you see a lot of forests. And the forests, they are the kind of green gold for Finland. So our industrialization took off by utilizing the forests for pulp and paper industry, and that's how we started to produce export goods and develop our economy, and our GDP increased. But what we want to make sure in the course of our roads towards economy of well-being is to avoid this kind of a scenario, that our children and grandchildren would not any longer see the beautiful lakes and forests, but just a deserted landscape. So that is the basic idea of in a nutshell, in our effort to become an economy of well-being. And then when we think about the factors which are probably threatening our well-being, we talk a lot about climate change. And I think it's really relevant for our children and grandchildren. And if we think about the girls who are going to born this year, 50% of them are predicted to live up to 100 years. So if we have a scenario in 2100 that the average temperature has been increasing 1.5 degrees from the current average, vis-a-vis a scenario where it has increased 4.5%, that makes a huge difference for them. But that's just the one thing. Another thing is also the extinction of species. And we talk about a lot about those 2. But there are also other factors. Some factors we still can't predict. So what we are seeing around the world is declining democracy. I think our notion of economy of well-being is very much based on the idea that we can develop our capitalist economies through democratic processes. But if you look at what has happened around the world, is that democracy is definitely in decline. Another issue concerns security questions. So as Hans Kluge said yesterday, so we have a war raging in Ukraine. And if we talk about Europe, I think as we are here today, there hasn't been so much military activity in the European continent since the Second World War. And there are also nations, we see also proliferation of nuclear weapons. So it means that we need to have a very broad range of indicators to prevent that kind of a fate which the Nauruans experienced. So then to say some concrete words about our road. So what we started was in the 1970s when we focused on single health problems like nutrition and smoking. Smoking prevalence used to be very high also in Finland, especially in the eastern part of Finland. In the 1980s, we implemented large-scale intersectional health programs, and then we also pioneered in implementing the health in all policies approach. And then, as has been said here before, we took up this concept of economy of well-being when we had the EU presidency in 2019. Since the beginning of this year, we have implemented a very big social and healthcare reform where the well-being service counties and municipalities will focus on promoting health and well-being. But as we know, this promotion issue is a tricky one, and it remains to be seen how successful the well-being service counties are. But since 2010, the municipalities, they have had a legislative duty to promote, to pass a program on how to promote health and well-being in their areas. So this our approach is embedded in some important institutions. First of all, we have the Nordic welfare state model, and it has a huge support among the population and also among political parties from left to right. So we have this strong support to build welfare state through fiscal policies, legislation, and contract society. And then we have the health in all policies approach, and we have also integrated, as many other countries, as we've seen many times over today in Iceland, that agenda sustainable development goals are part of this process, also in Finland. And then we have the EU Council conclusions. And this concept of economy of well-being was mentioned in the previous party program. This picture is from HBO documentary 5 First, which describes our gender equal. I think we actually made world history having a coalition government with 5 female heads taking us through the pandemic and taking us through the process of become NATO members. So this government, it mentioned economy of well-being twice in their program, and it might be that we're going to have tomorrow a new cabinet program, but it's quite unlikely that economy of well-being is mentioned there. But let's hope it is. The national activities consist of having a steering group developing a national strategy, and I'll say a few words about it in the next slide. The economy of well-being was also integrated into our COVID-19 recovery planning, and that national recovery and resilience plan, it had an economic well-being component. And then we have been quite active in cooperation in the EU and international fora, including HWO, and also we have had collaboration with the OECD. So here are some highlights from the National Action Plan, where Heli was very instrumental person. I don't know if Heli is in the room. Heli is there. Heli Uton was the secretary of this group, which put together this National Action Plan, which had 5 recommendations. The first one is to continue preparation for a steering model. So we've been a pioneering country, but so far we haven't had a steering model, and that's where we have been trying to learn from other countries. Then the second part is really what I have been trying to demonstrate here, is that sustainability is the key in our approach to economy of well-being. Then we are also developing impact assessment and strengthening competence in this area, exercising influence within the EU and strengthening inclusion. A new issue for us is that we also have sustainability assessment on the government level to support strategic decision making, and that's sustainability in 5 different areas: economic sustainability, ecological sustainability, social and health sustainability, human and cultural sustainability, and finally sustainability of security, rule of law, and democracy. So this is one instrument which we believe will have a kind of a long-standing influence, and it will be guiding our policies irrespective of the political composition of the cabinets. And the project where I am currently working is financed through the EU recovery funds, and that aims to fill the gap which is in our existing policy framework, and that is to develop the steering model. So this project we have 4 work packages: one to look at the best practices, the second to create the proposal for a steering model, and third one is to look for indicators, and the fourth one is to look at the case studies, and we have produced a leaflet which just came out of a printing house the day I left for Iceland, and my colleagues have some more copies if you like to have. What we have thought about the possible steering model is that there are probably 4 different options. One is to just work with the existing structures. For example, our Prime Minister's office has a steering function for government policies. Then another one is a kind of a centralized model where the responsibility and mandate would fall in the designated area of government, for example, Prime Minister's office. We don't want to have it on a social and health ministry, but perhaps because we want to engage also the finance ministry here. The third option is to look for parliamentary, for the parliament as a one solution. So currently we have a committee for future in the parliament, and that could be one option to place the responsibility on that committee. And finally, we have this what we call humble governance model, which is based on the principle of continuous learning and social dialogue. So we have developed this roadmap, and we hope that by the end of next year we will have the first model for our decision makers. And thank you all for your presentations here. So I think me and my colleagues, we have learned so much, and your inputs will be a very important ingredients in our future work. So thank you very much.